We'd like to thank Mr Fothergill Seeds and Cobra Garden for their support in the filming of Pots and Trowels. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. This week we're going to be pruning spring flowering shrubs and catching up in the veg plot where we've had a bit of a disaster. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. We're going to start out in the garden today, and the spring flowering shrubs, things like ribes, forsythia, viburnum, spireas have done really well this year, and the time to give them a prune if they need it. Of course you don't have to prune them every year, but if they get into the size where you think they need a little bit of restraining, the time to do it is as soon as they finish flowering. And this one is a flowering currant, the lovely white flowering one that's flowered and flowered and flowered this year, and we can see the flowers have now gone over and it's time to give it a bit of a tidy up. By nature of how it grows, it's a bit wide and spreading, and I don't want it to encroach too much on the shrubs and other plants around it. So the idea of pruning at this time of the year is simply to cut off some of the growth that's flowered this spring. So we can see here it's had all these old flowers on it. So what I'm going to do is follow that back in and cut it to a side shoot. And what that does is it means then from there it will produce new growth that will flower next year, because all of these early spring flowering shrubs always flower on the previous season's growth. So it's basically just a case of going round it, doing some pruning and reducing it in width and in height, just to sort of give it a bit of shape. We don't want to go mad, because if we suddenly cut it too hard, what that will do will encourage really strong, vigorous growth, but that will then be at the expense of flowers next year. So I'm just going to go round and tidy this up, especially where it's growing close to other plants. Now, if this shrub were very old and woody at the base and you wanted to regenerate a bit of growth from lower down, what you might need to use are some loppers so that you can get down in, take one or two of the older branches out, and then that gives it time to regenerate from the base and you'll get a lovely plant. So it's a really nice job to do on a spring morning, going round. It's getting a bit tall there, so I need to take some off. That one's growing over there, so that one can come off, and just gradually work your way around. Remember, the golden rule is you can always take a bit more off, but you can't put it back on. So don't go mad and get carried away. Just here, it's really growing out over this Philadelphia. So I'm going to take this one back a little bit harder into there. So you've just got to use your judgment to make sure that you're happy with it. And that one is very vigorous. So I think you get the idea. I'm going to go round the whole of that there. It's going to reduce it by about a third. It'll make lovely growth, and then next year we'll get a lovely display of flowers. So there you go, all finished, nice pile of prunings, reduced it in size. That'll make new growth and look really good next year. You've then got to get rid of all your prunings, of course, and it's quite difficult at the moment with landfill tips not being open. You can't always burn them, so you could just chop them up and keep them somewhere till you can get rid of them, or you can shred them, and that's what we tend to do with the woody prunings. And this is a quiet shredder, lots of different types available, and it's got a blade that chops around and almost grinds it. So if we switch it on and feed in, just pulls it down. It's totally safe to use because you can't get your hands into it. If there is a blockage, you just simply reverse it, and what that's doing is chopping them up, and it's dropping them into a box below, which makes it easier for you to either get rid of in a bin or use them as a mulch around the garden. And it just literally pulls it down on its own and makes a really neat job of it. Well, on the whole, things are growing fairly well in the vegetable garden. We had a really dry April. It didn't rain right until the very end, and then we didn't get a lot, but the peas are growing okay, the broad beans, the onions and shallots are all shooting through, potatoes, and we've got some beetroot seedlings here. There is a bit of a disaster, however, and I'll show you that in a minute. But where we've got in this bit of the garden, this is the root crop bed, we've got the beetroot there, which is just pushing through nicely now. Now we've had a shower rain, it will really perk up. Once I've sown the seed, I don't do any weeding until I can see the row of seedlings, and now they're visible. It's just a case of getting out my trusty hoe. I don't like hand weeding. I like to use the hoe usually on a dryish day, so I'd let it probably dry a little bit more, but just run the hoe neatly between the rows, just chopping off any of the annual weeds, but obviously taking care that we don't damage any of the vegetable seedlings. And if you get them when they're small, with a bit of breeze and sunshine, they soon dry off and wither away, and then we can see where the vegetables are, in this case the beetroot. But over here we've got the potatoes. Now these were planted about a month ago directly into the soil. We put some grass cuttings underneath them to stop the scab, which can be a problem on our soil, and we've now got a good few inches of growth there. So what we need to do is to start and form some ridges over the potatoes, and that encourages more tubers to form. So I'm using my draw hoe or a swan-necked hoe, but you can use a spade or a trowel if you haven't got one of these. And it is literally just the case of pulling some of the soil from the side of the rows over the potatoes, and we can just cover them. We don't want them to be buried several inches deep. We're just going to cover them over, and then what I'll do, I'll flip round and do the other side, so we create that ridge. And then as they grow and push through this ridge of soil, we'll gradually put on a little bit more soil so that we've got a nice broad ridge there, and then lots of lovely tubers that we can be lifting then in early summer. But I'll finish that in a short while. I need to show you this disaster, which is pretty bad, because if I just come over here, you'll see this is where we grew the carrots, or sowed the carrot seed under this frame to keep the carrot flies off. Just push that in there, hold that up. They were germinating nicely. I gave them a little bit of water to germinate them, and we'd got two lovely rows of carrots here and here, and the parsnips just starting to come through. And then we had some heavy rain overnight, came out the following morning, and everything had gone completely. And I'm afraid it's slugs, and the slugs don't come out very much when it's dry weather. As soon as we've had that rain, they all thought, whippy, let's get out there into the garden. And this is what they ate, and they were inside my cage here and just nibbled them all away overnight. So I've lost everything. Once they've been nibbled off, they won't regrow. So what I'm going to do is sow some more. There's still plenty of time. It's only just the beginning of May. I didn't sow all the seeds, so I've got some seeds left here of the varieties that were here. And now we've had some rain and the ground is naturally moist and it's warming up anyway. I think these will germinate very quickly. So they're going to be just a couple of weeks behind where I wanted them, but you know, it's a bit of a disaster, but looking forward, we're still hopefully going to get carrots. But what I will do is to put a few slug pellets down. Now, I don't want to preach to you whether to use slug pellets or not. These are the organic ones based on ferric phosphate. Organic growers use them. They're very effective. They're not harmful to wildlife. And I will just sprinkle a few of these on the surface. You don't need many at all. And this will then get the slugs. So hopefully we won't get a repeat. So looks like my job this afternoon is going to be re-sowing the carrots. Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels, and hope there's been some handy hints there for you. Thank you also for sharing it and telling all your friends about this. We'll be back again soon when I'm going to be feeding the asparagus and planting perennials to fill some gaps in the borders. Stay safe and see you soon. Bye.